Hi, I'm Chuck Olinek. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years in the classroom, I brought history to life by using living history. Duh. And what I would do is I would dress for the time periods, and that always got a lot of strange looks from both the kids and my colleagues. And I would have music going in the background, so essentially I created history soundtracks, so whatever culture or time period we were covering, the music was there. And I brought in artifacts, whether they were authentic or whether they were replicas, for the kids to handle. So that would be, if you want to be using fancy teacher talk to either impress administrators or impress each other, realia or manipulatives. It's stuff the kids could handle. So it was as one colleague phrased it, it was a kid-friendly museum that was portable. And now I'm not in the classroom anymore. So I've got this room at the house that's filled to capacity with garb. It's bursting, in fact. And I have this passion for bringing the past to life, but then I have that because I'm also involved in reenactment organizations on the weekends. I have this desire to preserve landmarks because landmarks tend to go away, and I want to create a record that they existed and tell the stories behind them. And I like playing history detective. It's what I do. I like to fit the pieces together. So what I'm involved in is a very pretentious sounding mission Odyssey, where I am visiting each of the sites in Alta California that had to do with the mission era and beyond. So that would mean the missions themselves, the asistencias, those are the spin-off missions, the estancias, those were the ranchos that were raising crops and raising livestock to support the missions. Most of them are paved over now and have housing developments on them. The presidios, those are the fortifications that were designed to protect the missions. And whatever else happens to fit into this framework. So basically 18th and 19th century stuff and Native American stuff. That's fair game for me. Well, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to Mission San Carlos, or as most people call it, Mission Carmel. And I want to tell that mission story. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. These next few chapters are kind of interconnected, interwoven, because they all center around the Bay of Monterey, at least the beginnings. And in 1542, exactly 50 years after Columbus showing up in the New World, you have a man named Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who has been commissioned by the governor of New Spain to sail north and explore the coast. And he takes 3 ships with him, names different areas. He actually documented a lot about the different tribes that he was running into in the villages, and he was doing population counts and giving a lot of very vivid descriptions. And on his way north, he managed to miss Monterey Bay, and he also missed San Francisco Bay. And I think the first was because of a storm, and then missing San Francisco Bay because of the fog. And he sailed north as far as maybe the Russian River, and turned back and found Monterey Bay and wrote descriptions of it, and I believe he named it the Bay of Pines. And he sailed on. He was going to winter in or off of one of the islands, San Miguel, one of the Channel Islands, where he ran into some trouble, broke his shin, and died of gangrene. But his descriptions, his logbook, are brought back to the governor. Now, 60 years later, the Spanish are going to venture forth again. And this time, it'll be a man named Sebastián Vizcaíno. And he will sail pretty much over the same areas, and he will describe them. And interestingly enough, he's going to kind of scratch out the names that Cabrillo provided, and he will put his own there. And he made it as far north as San Francisco Bay, turned around and comes back, and also ends up documenting about Monterey Bay. And December 17th of 1602, he comes ashore with a party, and prayers are made, and yay, all kinds of good stuff. January 3rd, Vizcaíno takes a small expedition with some Carmelite priests and discovers another river and another bay, which he will end up naming in honor of the priests with him, Carmel Bay. On July 14th, 1769, Governor Portola leads his grand expedition north with 63 soldados de cuera, leather jacket soldiers. He's got 100 mules with him, packed with supplies, and people to control the mules. He's got pioneros, basically the pioneers who are going to help make roads. And he is in search of the Bay of Monterey. He doesn't find it. Padre Serra wanted Governor Portola, upon his return, to get another expedition together and go north by land. And Padre Serra would take transport on a ship, and they would meet at Monterey Bay. This expedition went faster, this particular journey, because the land had already been explored somewhat, and the pioneros, the pioneers, had built roads. So they got there about a week before Padre Serra did, and Portola and Padre Crespi noted that there was a cross already erected. And they recognized it because they'd built it, and the cross was decorated. This meant that Portola had actually found the Bay of Monterey on the earlier expedition. The stories of the Presidio at Monterey and Mission Carmel, they're pretty much intertwined. On June 3rd, 1770, Pentecost Sunday, Padre Serra dedicated a new mission, the second mission, in the name of St. Charles of Borroméo. It became known as Mission San Carlos de Borroméo. And the mission and the Presidio were basically right next to each other. The mission and the Presidio are being established to block the advances of Russia and of Britain coming into California. Jose de Galvez was appointed Inspector General by King Carlos III of Spain, and it was tasked to him to defend Mexico and Alta California, and also to determine what the Russians and the British were up to. And it was his idea to establish Presidios, but he knew that the Presidios by themselves would not be enough to defend Alta California from outside incursions. So he was thinking to include Native Californians and involve them in the defense. He also felt that putting the presidios together would be better accomplished if he could send married soldiers and include their families, because this would also kind of boost the population a little bit. And what would end up happening is the way the soldados and their families would behave would serve as good examples of Spanish Christian life to the neophytes. Establishing the mission at Monterey and the Presidio at Monterey seemed to work out a lot better for the Spanish, because in San Diego, a year earlier, where the Presidio and mission were put up, the building materials were at first brush and mud. In the Monterey area, there were forests. So the soldados and the padres really felt like they lucked out, that their living conditions, the way they viewed it, were practically luxurious compared to what was going on in San Diego. And so this would allow for the Presidio to be built, a very sturdy structure, and within that, one large room would become the chapel for Mission San Carlos. The Esalen were the Native Americans that were living in the area of Monterey. The other major group in the area were the Ohlone, formerly known as Costanoans, from the Spanish costeño, meaning coast dweller. And when the Spanish explorers and missionaries arrived in the late 18th century, the Ohlone inhabited the area along the coast from San Francisco Bay through Monterey Bay to the lower Salinas Valley. In pre-colonial times, the Ohlone lived in more than 50 distinct landholding groups and did not view themselves as a single unified entity. They lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering as the Esalen, the members of these various bands interacting freely with one another. And prior to contact with the Spanish, they, like most of the other Native Americans in California, lived by hunting and gathering. And this was a seasonal thing where during the summer they're living off of the very plentiful seafood, and in other seasons they're moving inland and they're living off of acorns and wildlife. And after the Spanish arrived, well, they were being baptized and moved as entire family units to live at different missions. So this is going to start with, in this area, with Mission San Carlos, okay, the second mission. But later, Mission San Antonio de Padua gets established, and some of the Esalen were getting moved over there, and still later, Mission Soledad. More of them would get moved over there as family units, and they were being taught reading and writing, skills to make them civilized in the Spanish world, but they were also being taught various trades. And remember, the missions are about production, so these trades are going to be of use to the Spanish. Oh, the mission at Carmel? Way too much information. So it looks like I'm coming back to tell the next chapter. I hope you stick with me on my journey.